Hi there, I'm Jeanette Lane for Creative Stamping, and in today's video I wanted to show you how to make this easy triple time stamped card. So when I first saw these stamped cards, stamped and layered cards, I thought they were very complicated to make and they were very intimidating, and I just strayed away. But they're actually really easy. Now for my stamps today, I'm going to be using the set that is included in Creative Stamping 72, which is By the Seaside. So you get two sets this issue, which is really exciting. So this A4 sized By the Seaside, gorgeous sketchy scenes, gorgeous sentiments. I love this font, absolutely love it. Perfect for creating summer and seaside themed cards. And then you also get this A6 size Coastal Birds set from RSPB. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is to create our mats and our layers. So here we have the first layer, which is the card base. So that's really easy. So it's just a card blank, and I will give you all the measurements. So we've got 3 layers going. Then we have this layer here, then another mat, another layer, another mat, and another layer. So let me show you all of the dimensions for everything so that you can get straight to cutting and stamping. So here are all the mats and the layers that you're gonna need, and let's start with the smallest. So this one here is 2 3 1/4 inches. With its corresponding mat, which is 2 1/4 inches by 3 1/2 inches. So that will eventually go there. Then this one is 3 inches by 4 1/4 inches with its corresponding mat, which is 3 1/4 inches by 4 1/2 inches. So that will go there. And then this one is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. With the base, you just trim a piece of cardstock to 8 1/2 inches by 5 1/2 inches, and you just score that in half, and you get a nice card blank there. So that's going to be our first layer, and our card blank. I'm going to make sure to post these dimensions on the video description so that you can get straight to crafting. Okay, first things first is we want to temporarily glue these 3 together. So layered one on top of the other so that we can do our stamping. So I'm going to be using a 6-2 tape runner, and I'm just going to put a little swipe of it right at the center. And it might be, if it's a little too tacky, then all you have to do is just dab it on your jumper. Make sure that it's not too sticky. And then we're gonna put this layer right on top of here, making sure that it's nice and centered and straight. So that's stuck together, temporarily just stuck together for the sake of stamping. So then we're gonna flip this over. Again, put a little swipe of your tape runner right on the back. Dab it on your jumper so that it's not too tacky. And then we're gonna center this layer on our largest layer. So that is looking okay. That looks good. Here's what my layers look like right now. And again, this is just temporary for the sake of stamping so that we can get a nice even stamp throughout our 3 layers. So I'm just gonna turn to my Tim Holtz stamping platform just to make sure that this doesn't budge around. You don't necessarily need a stamping platform. You can just use a stamp block. I just like it. I feel more confident with my stamping when I use my stamping platform. So I'm gonna grab my largest stamp, which is this one here with the umbrella and the beach chairs, which is beautiful. And then I'm just gonna place that kind of at the bottom right across all 3 of my layers. Maybe push it down a little bit. Position your stamp, and this looks most effective if you're using a large stamp that's gonna go across all 3 layers. Now for my ink, I'm gonna be using Nuvo Hybrid ink in Black Shadow. And the reason I picked this ink is because it's amazing, but also you can use it with watercolors or alcohol marker mediums. So I'm just gonna ink up my stamp, and we're gonna stamp this. Easy breezy. This is so much easier than I thought it was going to be. And also, like I said, make sure this is most effective when you use stamps that go across all 3 layers. So here's what that looks like. You can see that I've stamped across all 3 layers. Now I'm gonna set my stamping platform aside, and I'm just gonna use an acrylic block for the rest of my elements that are gonna be stamped onto my card, just so that you can see that it is possible to use a stamping block. You don't necessarily need a stamp positioning tool to do this technique. Next, I want to stamp my sentiment and get that out of the way. For my original card, I picked relax, but there's with love, thank you, hello, best wishes, thinking of you, happy birthday, spread your wings, friend, and then this gorgeous verse that says, nothing soothes the soul like a walk on the beach. And I'm gonna have to disagree with that verse just a little bit. Honestly, the beach makes me nervous because I have this irrational fear of tsunamis. So I mean, it's gorgeous. The beach is beautiful, but in the back of my head, I'm always thinking, where am I gonna run if there's a tsunami? I don't know if anybody else is like that, but that is what I think when I'm at the beach. Okay, so I'm going with the with love sentiment. And we're just gonna stamp that on this first layer here. So right there, looks good. Maybe we'll do it at the center. Now I'm going to grab some of these smaller elements to stamp along the border of my card. So for this one, I use the seashells and the starfish, but of course there are like little flock of birds that I could use. I could use the sun and create like a starburst effect. So lots of options. And there's also a kite and this little beach sign, which is really cute. So I'm going to go with just like my original design, and go with the starfish and the shell. That was really difficult for some reason. I'm going to be stamping off of the card, so I want to make sure to protect my self-healing mat that I have here. I want to protect that from this inkiness from getting stained. It's actually pretty good. You can clean it up easily, but just in case. So what I'm going to do is put this all on my craft mat so that it's nice and protected. And then we're just going to stamp. So first up, I'm grabbing the seashell, getting it all inky. So there is my first shell, and then I'm going to stamp another one on this side. Like I mentioned earlier, this technique is most effective when you are stamping across the 3 layers, if possible. It just looks better once you mat and layer it, as you're going to see in just a bit. And next, I'm going to stamp my starfish. So I'm stamping this little guy off of my card, just for interest so that it looks like a pattern. And this one, let's stamp it right here on these 2 layers there. That looks good. And then this one we can stamp on those 2 layers. So again, make sure that you're stamping across your layers. It'll look most effective. And I just wanted to mention that this border here that I'm doing with the seashell and the starfish was inspired by creative stamping editor Nikki Gilbert, who did a mini demo on tone-on-tone stamping in a previous video, so you can check that out. But there is what all of my layers look like. Temporary layers, so I'm just going to color this first. Also, when you're coloring, I do recommend that you keep your card intact like so. So especially if you're gonna do any sort of blending and shading with like alcohol markers, you wanna make sure that your shells are all nice and even. So it's easiest to keep it intact when you are coloring it with certain mediums. However, I found that when I colored with my distress inks, the color was pooling just in certain areas because of the different layers. So the easiest thing for me was to separate each of these layers and then do my coloring that way. Now to color, I'm going to be using mustard seed. Originally on this card, I used a bundled sage, but I don't know, I was feeling a little bit just more summery, so I wanted to use mustard seed, and I'm just going to go over all of my background here, making sure to avoid the insides of my images. So I want to go just around the starfish. Again, that's going to give my card a faux masked effect. So my first layer is done, and I'm going to put this next to its corresponding layer so that can dry it there, and then I'm going to move on to my next layer. Now I can go into the center layer there and color it if I wanted to. It's just gonna get covered up at the end, so I'm not going to be too bothered if I'm not too precise on, the center, or if I go too far into the center. My 3 layers are all colored and done, so now it's just time to to glue them onto our corresponding mats. So we're just going to turn this over and add some adhesive. And if you want to give your card more depth, more dimension, then you can use some foam tape to really make those layers pop. Okay, so now it's time to glue my 3 mats together. So what I'm gonna do with these 2, I'm just gonna use a regular Sticks to tape runner for that portion, but I want this layer to really pop once it's together. So I'm gonna be using some foam tape on that layer. So first, let's glue this one together. Now you want to make sure that your stamps all align, so use a larger element. So I'm going to use the umbrella here as my guide, so making sure that this line here, the top line of the umbrella just continues seamlessly. And then I'm also going to use the umbrella stick here to make sure that it just goes directly onto, just that it's nice and lined up with the image where it continues. I hope that makes sense. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. There it is. This is looking great. I'm really happy with this. Now, before I mount this final layer with some foam tape, because I really want it to pop, I wanted to just add a little bit of twine for effect, for texture, for added texture. So I have this red and white baker's twine, and I'm just gonna simply tie a bow here and then mount it to this final base layer, my card base, with some foam tape. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and that you're able to replicate this technique at home. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Creative Stamping 72 with this gorgeous By the Seaside stamp set, and also those coastal birds. Also, check out the Papercraft Magazine's website so that you can pick up some free downloads as well, which go along with the By the Seaside theme. And I'll make sure to include that link in the video description too. I'm Jeanette Lane for Creative Stamping. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.